Communication Essentials. What if you knew how to interact with anyone in a positive, effective way and influence others to your way of thinking in an ethical fashion? I'd like to introduce you to the Communication Essentials. NLP, standing for Neuro-Linguistic Programming, is one of the most powerful strategies I have learned in my 30-year career as an executive presence, image, etiquette, communication, and leadership coach. When you learn to use all 5 senses when you're interacting with others, you will become magical and have a greater level of influence. So if we think about those 5 essential modalities, it's about visual, auditory, kinesthetic, olfactory, and gustatory. And that basically in everyday language is what you see, what you hear, what you feel, what you smell, and what you taste. So when you're interacting with others, just ask them an open-ended question that requires more than one-word answer. And if they give you a sentence or 2 back, immediately you can understand how they prefer to think and process and make their decisions. So, if I were to ask someone, the last time you went to the airport, what did you see? And they might say something like, well, I saw, or I experienced, or they might even say, oh, it was horrible, there were so many people, and everyone was dressed so poorly, and the lines were so long. Well, every answer that they could possibly give you, you'd be able to identify based on the words that they use. So if they're visual learners, they might say things like, I can picture that, I see what you mean, that was a magnificent plethora of color, they saw it. They'll also look up, and they'll have lots of energy in their voice and their expressions, and they'll probably do a lot of hand gestures. That's what many people who are visual learners do. They speak rapidly, and they can easily jump from topic to topic. Our auditory people are very different in how they process, and they process in a linear way. And they think 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Where a visual might be 3, 7, 5, 9, 12, bingo! It's so very different. Now, an auditory person has a very moderate voice with little tonality range, so they would be almost flatlining with their voice. So take out all of the energy and calm down and think methodically with very little voice change, and speak slowly because that's how they process. An auditory person might say things like, I hear what you mean, that sounds good to me, or that resonates. They use very little hand movement, and it would be a slow gesture, or possibly even a knee-jerk reaction, but it would be very limited and contained. Our next modality is the kinesthetic, and these people are all about how something feels to them. So these people, when you ask them open-ended questions, they might say, what's that? That feels good to me. We could do that. Or, I get it, and I just know in my gut that that's the right answer. And they'll be very clear about what they're giving to you in the way of an answer. So it's quite exciting, actually. And these people will say things like, I feel the energy that you're projecting to me. Now, each of these 3 main modalities, visual, auditory, and kinesthetic, are very powerful, and they give it away as to their main modality by where they look when you ask them an open-ended question. So our visual people look up for their answer. Our auditory people look straight across with their eyes. And our kinesthetic people look down into their feelings. Now, if the person is right-handed and you ask them an open-ended question and they know the answer or they have experienced whatever it is you're asking about, they will look up and to their left, which is your right. If they have never experienced what you're asking them about, they will look up and into their future and hope the answer falls from heaven. But if they've never experienced, they're going to look up. Now, if the person is auditory and you ask them an open-ended question that they have experienced or that they know the answer to, they will look straight across with their eyes into their past if they're right-handed. So you'll be seeing them look to your right. If they do not know the answer or they have not experienced whatever it is that you're discussing, they will look over to their right, your left, directly across with eyes at level, and then give you an answer. If the person is right-handed and they are kinesthetic or all about the feeling, they will look down into their energy and their essence. And if I were a kinesthetic, I would look down and say, well, when that happened to me, I felt this way. And if they've never experienced that, they would look down into their right, which is your left, so you can immediately tell by the tonality, the words they use, where they look, how rapidly they speak. And then there's one more element, and that element is about if they're left-handed. Basically, it's pretty easy. It's just the opposite. So a left-handed person, when responding, is going to look into their future over here. The kinesthetic, their future down here. And the auditory over here to my right for their experiences. And so think about the power of communication. Many years ago, probably 15 or 20 years ago, I studied and received my master's certificate in NLP, Neuro-Linguistic Programming. It's probably the most expensive and most important thing I've ever learned. It gives me insight into audiences. Here's an example. If people are visual learners, they're all excited, and you can be really excited as a professional speaker on the platform or in your corporation, sharing ideas and bringing the energy with you to bring your people on board to your ideas. However, if they're auditory, you would want to slow down, systematically prepare, have everything in an orderly fashion without showing outward energy. They need to collect their thoughts in their heads and process before they move to another modality and get the emotional buy-in. Now, if you're in the situation where people are kinesthetic, then obviously you want to appeal to how they feel about something. Remember the last time you ran the World's Cup race and how you felt about that. Or if you sailed in the last race that happened for that season, they'll remember how they feel. Now, one added element is that we all have the ability to use all 5 modalities: visual, auditory, kinesthetic, olfactory, and gustatory. But we have one main modality from our top 3. Of visual, auditory, and kinesthetic. So whatever our top modality is, we will automatically think and speak and act in that particular fashion. Then we have a secondary modality, and we will go into that afterwards. However, your strength as a magnificent communicator will be when you understand the NLP and how it works, so that you can then bring people to your way of thinking once you first go to their way of processing information, and then bring them to you to gain a higher level of credibility and influence. This must be done ethically because it's such a powerful strategy, and yes, it works. Gloria Starr, corporate trainer, executive coach, and professor at international universities around the world. I'd be simply delighted to work with you in your company, teaching strategies of success in executive presence, etiquette, manners, communication, and leadership excellence.